At Durham in the early 12th century, a group of scribes produced at least 5 chronicle texts, but each has a different form. Some are very long, some are very short, and often the chronicles contain different information from different periods of time and different geographical focuses. It looks like each individual chronicle was trying to record different events, but why? Why weren't they just working on a single comprehensive source for historical events? Most chronicles were written by a small group of high-level intellectuals working in medieval monasteries and cathedral schools. They cared about time because it was their job to pray in the right ways at the right times and on the right feast days all through the year. But how do they know how to do this? Well, in many cases, we can see communities actively calculating their calendars for themselves through a discipline of learning called computus or computistics. The best example of why this was done is the problem of Easter. Some of the best thinkers from medieval Europe weighed in on the debate on how to locate the date of Easter in any given year, and it was by no means a closed question. They often used cyclical tables containing information on the lunar calendar, the solar calendar, and other ways in which to help calculate the date. Then you would work out which one applies to each particular year that you were in. But as we know, the date of Easter changes every year. So how do you know which year you're in? How do you know which line of the table to begin on, and what year does that correspond to? How effectively, they're asking effectively, how do you know what the actual year is? The answer is that you work backwards through history, and for that you need a chronicle. For example, if you know the length of a king's reign, you can count backwards, and if you know the length of the king's reign before that, you can count further backwards, and so on. The eventual aim would be to get to the year in which Christ was crucified, and then in theory you can know exactly what number year you're in and when Easter should be celebrated. So in this context, the disciplines of computus and history are inseparable areas of study. It's common to find that medieval scribes were leading experts in both fields, just like Simeon, who was an early 12th century thinker at Durham. In the 11th century, a monk from Mainz wrote a grand new chronicle in which he recalibrated the existing and popular date of the world by 22 years. Several copies of this Marianus chronicle were produced in Anglo-Norman England, including one at Durham. His revolutionary theory, however, was not popular, and we think we know why. Another Anglo-Norman historian, called William of Malmesbury, described how Marianus had found few or none to follow his argument. William studied time and history as well, and reflecting on why Marianus' chronicle was not popular, he basically argued that the chroniclers of his own time were simply too lazy to change a dating system that had been in place for hundreds of years. In typically poetic language, William wrote, "Such is our devotion to the familiar and the habitual, so true it is that almost no one accords to new discoveries, however plausible, the unimpassioned acceptance they deserve. With all our efforts, we go plodding along after the opinions of the ancients, and everything new is undervalued, and thus, since public credit is wit's only nursing mother, where credit is slow in coming, sleep reigns supreme." And I think this is an excellent lesson for us to remember as historians in the 21st century.